Welcome back to Unspoken Emotions, the podcast where we gently bring voice to feelings many people carry quietly while life continues moving around them. The emotions that shape who we become, even when the world only sees our strength. Today's conversation is about motherhood, but not the glossy version, not the neat milestones or the predictable path. This is about the moment you realise the future you imagined for your child may not unfold the way you pictured, and what that does to you as a parent. Because alongside love, there can be grief. Alongside determination, there can be doubt. And alongside progress, there can be quiet comparison. My guest today is Jenny Briggs. When her daughter Sarah was diagnosed with autism and a rare genetic anomaly, Jenny didn't just step into advocacy. She stepped into a complete reshaping of herself. She created something called Sarah Rise, which is based on the Sunrise program, building a one-to-one, loving, play-centered approach around her daughter. She coordinated volunteers, she opened her home, and committed deeply to meeting Sarah exactly where she was. But underneath that commitment were questions, self-doubt, there were clashes, and moments of wondering if she was enough. So, with that, Jenny, welcome to the show. Welcome to Unspoken Emotions. And thank you for being here with us today. I'm really pleased to have you here.
Thank you for having me. That introduction really spoke to me. I feel very seen.
Thank you. You should be. You are very seen. So Jenny, if I can, I want to start here, please, not just with the program and not with the blog, but when you first heard the word autism connected to Sarah, tell us what happened inside you.
Well, I had previously gotten the diagnosis of the genetic anomaly, and that moment was when I felt like my world turned upside down and I was falling through a black hole, and I just didn't know which way was up and how to function and what the heck just happened to my life. By the time we got the autism diagnosis, I had already done my first round of training at the Autism Treatment Center of America to learn to run a Sunrise program, which I'd read about in college many years prior. And so getting the autism diagnosis was kind of like, great, I'm already doing the thing that I thought would be the best to do if I ever had a child with autism. Check.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good start then, because, this is just a massive thing, isn't it? But I mean, before the diagnosis, what did you imagine motherhood would actually look like?
I think that I expected to have a child like me. As soon as I can remember learning that I could have kids, I knew I wanted kids. And yet it didn't really occur to me that I would have anything other than like recreating my own childhood, which was great. And I had wonderful parents and I wanted to be as good as they were. And then what I got was just a lot harder. There was no blueprint, all the books of what to expect when you have a child who is neurodiverse and not meeting their milestones, all of a sudden you don't have a guidebook and you don't know what you're expecting. And Sarah did meet her milestones, but way later, and we had to have a lot of different therapies to help her get to those points.
There was obviously the time where you realized that it might actually look different. Motherhood is going to look different. Did you, especially to the one that you first imagined, especially, when you said, I thought she was just going to be me and, another me. Did you ever feel like that you ever allowed yourself to grieve the motherhood that you expected?
I think I went through a lot of internal fighting with reality and with like, this can't be my situation. And if I just work hard enough, if I just take her to enough therapies, how can this be me? And then when I read a book that said that parents would go through the grieving process when they have a child with a disability, suddenly it gave me permission to have all those feelings. And that was so helpful to be like, oh, I'm not a bad person. It's okay. I can love my child and be grieving what I thought I was going to have. And it was only once I let myself really grieve and have all my tears. And this is ongoing through now. She's 19 and I still have times where I need to let myself cry about things feeling hard or hopeless, or I don't know what to do and I feel like a bad parent, once I let all those feelings out that I may be holding in, thinking, no, if I feel this, then it means I'm an even worse parent, or I'm the worst parent on the planet. I have to face into those feelings and let them come out of me. And my chosen way is crying, often on the kitchen floor. And then I feel clean and clear, and I actually can love her easily without all of the emotional baggage weighing me down.
I think that's you've said like it's something that you still go through now, and she's 19 now, but I think that's one of the things that like parents don't say out loud is that you can still love your child completely and grieve, I guess, for the version of life that you obviously once pictured. Did you ever feel guilty for feeling like that?
Oh, hugely, which I think at the beginning was why I wasn't letting myself fully grieve, because it just felt too awful, like too ugly of an emotion to be thinking, I wish wasn't in this situation. But if I kept resisting that feeling, then I was actually toting it around with me all the time. So it was only once I would take ownership of it and be like, "Yep, this is how I'm feeling. I am really um, disappointed. I'm mad. I'm feeling hopeless. I don't know what to do." Once I could acknowledge those feelings, then I could be more present with her. I could be more creative. I could be more loving. I could think, well, what therapies have we not tried? Let's try something new. So we tried a whole lot of different things before I decided when she was 4 to learn to run a sunrise program.
Did you? It must have been like really, especially in the earlier days, and you were feeling those elements of guilt for feeling like that. Did you ever look at did you ever look at other families and think, why does this seem easier for them?
I remember because I was part of like, just a mom and baby play group, but Sarah was the only one who had challenges and was not meeting her milestones. And I'd watch these other babies like rolling over and be like, what am I seeing? That looks like magic. I don't understand. And sometimes I felt really lonely, even or especially at those play dates, even though the people with me were my friends, but I was watching their babies and feeling like I was being left behind, and or Sarah was being left behind. And um, I remember wishing that someone else would have a child with special needs so that we could connect and I wouldn't feel less alone, or I wouldn't feel as alone. But then I also felt horrible for having that thought. And yet, in the big picture, I think Sarah has been such a tremendous gift to me that I wouldn't trade this experience if you were to say, "Oh, would you like to go back in time?" There are occasional moments when when I'm feeling hopeless and like we're
Yeah.
dealing with a situation and I'm like, I don't know how to do this. That then I'll be like, yeah, I would take that magic wand now, please. But usually when I'm not gripped with the stress of that kind of like desperate feeling, then I would absolutely not change the journey we've been on.
When you were thinking and having those like thoughts, did you ever judge yourself for it?
Oh, so much. I mean, I still do. I basically have to learn my lessons over and over and over because I'll still resist whatever the feeling is if I am judging it and thinking, oh, this means I'm a really terrible person. And then I have to remind myself, no, no, let yourself go there. That's the only way to be free of it. And I go through that. It's like being on like a hamster wheel or something, like, oh, here we are again, this kind of emotion. Yep, feeling like a terrible person. Yep, here we go. Okay.
Yeah. When you look back at that now, I mean, what would you say to yourself back then? I mean, going through all of those things and all of those feelings back then with the person that you've become now. What would you say to your earlier self?
I would say good job and keep going. And yeah, it feels hard, but it is going to get easier. Um, when Sarah was very young, like before she reached a year old, we were having trouble getting her to gain weight, and she was diagnosed as failure to thrive, which means the baby is not gaining weight at the rate that the doctors want them to, and everybody starts getting worried. And that was a really, really stressful period of trying. I would do anything to get her to eat. I would walk with her in a stroller, and every couple steps I'd stop and like give her a little cracker or a sip of a high calorie drink. Um, but I had this vision in my head then that I kept telling myself of like, someday we'll look back at this time and laugh because we will be in a different place and we'll say, remember when Sarah didn't like to eat? And that is true. We are in that place. We do look back because she's been eating well now for years. And so I use that to remind myself as we have been having sleep issues this past like half year, um, or sometimes challenges with school. I just keep telling myself, hey, remember, someday you could look back on this and laugh and say, remember when we had so much trouble, because maybe she'll be in a really different place and it won't be difficult.
Jenny, tell us about Sarah, if you would. Tell us about that. How old was she when you first knew something wasn't quite right? And then take us through the sort of journey about, like the milestones, when you were hitting them, what you were feeling, what you were thinking. Let's hear about Sarah, please.
So when she was born, she was very tiny. She was full term, but she was only 5 pounds, 5 ounces, but seemed fine, but still, small. So none of the clothes that we had fit until someone gave us some preemie size things. But we thought everything was fine. And then when she was around 6 to 8 weeks old, she had some seizures. And so that got us into the hospital, but they were ruled benign, and then she didn't have more. And so again, like that was still early days, like, okay, everything's fine. By the time she was 6 months old, that's when we were really noticing, compared to her peers, that she was not doing what they were doing. And doctors were starting to notice. And so then we started going to so many different appointments, getting the early intervention therapists coming to the house for occupational therapy, physical therapy. Once she was not gaining enough weight, we had a nutritionist coming to the house to weigh her every couple of weeks, or when she was a little older, then I would take her into a place. When she was a little older, then I also had a speech therapist coming to the house. She was 1 by the time she was sitting, and 18 months for crawling, and 3 for walking, where most kids are walking around age 1. We tried to have the mindset of, it's not if she will do something, it's when. But in those early days, we really actually didn't know if it was going to be the if.
Yeah.
Like, is she going to learn
Yeah.
to walk or talk or feed herself or use the toilet or anything? Like, everything was such a huge question. And I was really in survival mode, I think, those first few years. Her eating did start getting better around age like 3.5, 4. Like, it just continued to get better and easier. That still meant I was giving her ice cream anytime she'd ask, or I gave her butter straight. I would add powdered oil to her foods to increase the calories, like whatever she would eat, whenever she would eat it, which in hindsight, I can say maybe that was not the best, but I was determined to avoid a feeding tube because I thought that might influence things down the line. Maybe I would have had a lot less stress if we'd done the feeding tube. I don't know. Can't go back. But when she was 4, she was still not talking. She could sign and she could point to things and she could walk, and things, things were coming along. But it was at that point where I thought, I think I need to do something bigger. And part of my determination to keep trying may have been fighting the diagnosis, that I was still determined to try to have a typical child. But I also would like to think that I really just wanted to give her the most help to be her full self, whatever that meant. And those can be really bound up in each other and hard to tease out what's coming from where. But I decided to go to the Autism Treatment Center of America, learn to run a Sunrise program, which I called Sarah Rise in honor of Sarah. And what I loved was that we were trying to meet her where she was, and we weren't stopping her repetitive behaviors. We were using those as the doorway to connection. So I would go in the room and spend a couple hours with her. And then my volunteers would also do like 2-hour shifts, just completely focused on her and following her lead, working towards language, celebrating her eye contact, working towards interactive attention span, but all not forcing. So things that she loved to do repetitively were like she loved opening and closing lids or pressing on plaid fabric or like any sort of pattern. She loved just sort of touching a pattern, or putting crayons in a container or putting little plastic candles in between her toes over and over and taking them out and putting them in. So I would spend a ton of time doing the same thing, just silently. Like we might open and close a lid for half an hour before she would look at me. And then I could say something like, lid, because she had looked at me for a second. And maybe that was the only word we practiced for that day. And if she even came close to saying anything, I would just go nuts celebrating her. So her
that's
language
amazing.
started coming as soon as I got back from my week of training because I started interacting with her differently. I started believing in her more. I think that's when I shifted to the, oh, it's when, it's not if. I started giving her more time. She is someone who, if you ask her a question, she might take 20 or 30 seconds to answer you. And you might have no acknowledgement from her that she has heard you or is planning on answering. And so even today, like I could ask her, what do you want for breakfast? And then I start counting in my head, 1, 2, 3. Because if I don't count, 3 seconds feels like an eternity of being ignored. But then I'll get up to 20 and I'll think she is not going to answer. I'm going to have to ask again. And then she'll answer. And she just needed that time. And if I had reprompted, she might have then needed to start her process again and would take even longer. So
Oh, I love her.
she's someone who needs time.
Yeah.
She has a feisty determination and a temper, and she's adorable and she's loving and she's sweet. She loves pressing her chin into my head. Like she'll hug me and press as a sign of her love. But she also will press her hand into her chin if she's getting stressed. So that's when I know, oh, she's trying to regulate herself. And those things have been from her earliest days that she would do that. And with her feisty, stubborn determination, just that in that way, she's probably just like me. Then we clash sometimes and can really fight and yell at each other. And this was from the early days of like, are we trying to change a diaper? And she's screaming and I can't stand it. And so I scream back. And then I feel like the worst mother in the world for screaming at my child. But we go through these times where we're mad at each other, but that lasts for like 10 minutes. And then we're hugging and we're saying, I'm sorry. And we're, to the extent that she can, talking through maybe what we got stressed about. Now, normally that's a lot of me being like, were you feeling? And then she might say, yeah. At this point, she can talk a blue streak, but it's around the subjects that she likes, usually. So it's not that you can get a lot of information from her necessarily. If you ask, how was your day? She'll say good, or it was amazing. She loves windshield wipers. She loves her bus driver. She loves her piano teacher. So from a girl who couldn't talk when she was 4 and we didn't know if she would learn to walk, she has come so far. She can play games like Candyland, like simple games. She takes an acting class for kids with special needs and sings songs and has some lines this year. She takes a piano lesson every Monday and plays simple songs in recitals. She can ride a bike. She can swim. And these skills didn't come until just a couple years ago. And she's still working to get better at them. But those have really shown me that we just don't know what she's capable of. And we have to keep trying. And she might need 1,000 more hours of practice than her sister, but she'll get there. And Sarah can read and write. Math is extraordinarily hard for her and so stressful. She when she had some math to do at home on a virtual school day because of snow, and I tried to help her, she got so stressed so fast that she was making herself ill. And I was like, well, we're just not doing the math then. Like, it's not worth it to have you feel so stressed about it.
Did you ever feel like it would be that hard, or did you ever feel like it would be harder, or like where were you on the sort of scale of emotions? This is so much to sort of try and digest, isn't it? And all these milestones that obviously, you know, Sarah is actually hitting, albeit maybe a bit later. I mean, did you ever feel that they were outside of her reach, or did you just know that someday she would hit it, or was that just a faith?
I think it's just faith and hope. And because we have had these times where she did learn to do a thing, even if it took a long time, to be like, well, let's try it. I don't know that she'll ever actually be able to do math easily. I think that that is just really, really hard for her brain to get around. Whereas, or maybe we haven't figured out the thing. Like, I was going to say, whereas with reading, she was able to get it, but she wasn't able to get it in the typical way. Like, trying phonics didn't work at all. And then when we tried a way that was memorizing sight words and I could write sight words that she found interesting, she learned right away. Your question about was it harder than I expected? Yeah, this whole journey has been way, way, way harder than I ever thought parenting would be. And I have been more a person, like when I've been mad at her, of being like, how am I this person? How this is not who I thought I was. This is not how my parents were with me. How is this happening? How am I living? It almost can feel like a nightmare. How am I stuck in this nightmare? And the flip side of that is it has stretched my being, my soul, my spirit, my heart, my creativity more than anything ever has, to keep coming back no matter how many times I feel knocked down by whatever challenge or how to teach her a thing. It's like, well, let's try again the next day. Let's ask someone else. Let's try something new. And that's been so rewarding too. Certainly we haven't figured it all out, but because nothing came easily for her and nothing was guaranteed, that meant every new word that she said was huge. And we celebrated everything and didn't take anything for granted. And you'd think that then with her sister, who was born 4 years later, that maybe I would have been in awe again. And in some ways I was, but I could also tell, because she's neurotypical, it was like, oh, yeah, you're just totally going to learn to read, and like, this is not a problem. I don't have to work at it. And I think I've been a more relaxed parent for Amy, Sarah's sister, because it's like, no. Anything that other parents might be stressed about like, is their kid doing whatever? It's like, no, this is easy. This part's easy. Look, she's just doing it. Nothing else is a problem.
Oh, bless. It's so hard, though. I mean, obviously, with those times where you were feeling all those emotions, where you were feeling like particularly stressed or getting a bit anxious or getting a bit short, or having those clashes with her, because you said that, you know, she's quite feisty and determined, and you know, I think you are, you know, she's quite like you in that way. So did you ever feel like that guilt, you know, for feeling sort of just really stressed or short with her, particularly when, you know, she's you remember then for a second that she's got autism, and then, you know, did you have that awful mum guilt that so many of us go through for all different reasons, you know, as a parent, but obviously more so than...
You could be speaking of last night or this morning. Yeah. Honestly, I feel like I have a moment like that almost every day, at least a few times a week. I would like to think that in the past week, I've had a few moments, and this is true, where I have truly been able to calm myself differently and approach her differently in a scenario where normally we sort of have our rehearsed dance steps of like, oh, she's going to do this and I'm going to do this, and like, ugh. So I'm hopeful, And yet I also know how many times have I thought, oh, I've got it all figured out. And then it's like when you're ice skating and you're getting really confident and then wham, down on the ice. And so I can think, oh, I think I'm starting to not get so triggered by certain things. And I'm like, oh, there's going to be a thing.
Sure, sure, sure. And it happens to all of us from time to time. But you, Jenny, you started then Sarah's Rise, and we've touched upon that briefly. But obviously that wasn't a small decision to make. I mean, you organised volunteers, you spent hundreds of hours on this, you trained people, and that takes a lot of leadership and control. And so when you first decided to do that, what do you think you were really trying to protect? Was it Sarah? Was it yourself? Or was it like your sense of purpose?
I think it was maybe my hope that she could learn to talk, and have a connection with me in a bigger way than we were having at that time. Her eye contact was starting to sort of drift away from us a little bit around the time when I decided to learn to run the program. But it's also something, sometimes you wonder about the big picture of one's life. Because in college, I had read the book Sunrise by Barry Neil Kaufman, and I was so moved by how the parents cleaned up their own emotional crap to be really clean and clear and creative with their son, Ron, who's the original Sunrise son, and how much meeting him where he was and joining his repetitive behaviors made an enormous difference for him. And he just transformed from not being able to interact easily with the world to being able to interact easily with it. I was so moved by that journey that in college, I thought, wow, I almost want to run a Sunrise program. And yet, those early years with Sarah, I was so desperate just to keep her alive, is how it felt, that it didn't occur to me to do it. And it was only once we weren't fully in survival mode that I was like, okay, I think I can do this. And also, I think I need to do something. Like I definitely felt a lot of responsibility and guilt for her condition, as if somehow it was something I did or didn't do, and that it was my responsibility to quickly fix it. And I think learning to run the Sunrise program for her, that is what helped me start letting go of the idea that anything needed to be fixed, and to let go of judging myself and just really appreciate her for who she was, who she could be, want to support her to be the most capable she could be, but without forcing her to be someone that she's not. And that's a continuing process, to keep being like, oh, am I pushing her to learn her lines for her play because of me, or because I want her to be the best she can be, or how do I separate out the line?
Yeah.
So that I'm encouraging and supporting, but not pushing.
Yeah, sure. And then obviously there's the philosophy that said, don't stop her repetitive behaviors, join her instead. And that requires surrender. How was that kind of surrender, like the letting go of fixing? Was that sort of was the letting go of fixing harder than stepping into doing?
That part felt like a relief, and being in the room with her felt kind of quietly magical, and like I could stop juggling all the balls I was juggling in my life when I went into the room with her, because to make the program possible, I had to have more support for myself. So instead of me being at home solo parenting during the day with 2 kids while my husband was at work, I was having volunteers. I mean, not right away, but I had someone to come be with Amy so I could be with Sarah. Then I was only focusing on Sarah. Or I had someone with Sarah and I could really focus on Amy. And so while I was taking on more management and coordination, It also simplified some moments, and the permission that I was able to give myself to just be in the room and open and close the lid for half an hour and consider that a six or for 2 hours. If we did that for 2 hours, I could still walk out of that room and consider the session successful and that I did a good job, because my being in there was giving her an invitation, a constant invitation to connect. And it was up to her to take it or to not. But I felt really clear that I was doing something helpful and good. So, and I also noticed right away when I would join her, she started paying attention to me differently and we were having better connections and her language started coming. So, to have the proof right away that this approach was going to help her and do something, it was just exhilarating.
Mm-hmm. Must have really spurned you on as well and given you that hope, that you're doing the right thing, and just allowing yourself the permission to have the time, to just do that. Must have just felt, like a real weight off your shoulders, surely.
Yes, huge.
Yeah. But you've spoken about opening your home, to volunteers, and that really means letting people see, the hard bits as well as the not so hard bits. And was that vulnerable for you to do? And did you ever worry about being judged?
I didn't. I'd say half of the people that came to help were friends or acquaintances of mine, and then half I had never met before. But I loved them and they loved us. And the hard part was accepting the fact that these amazing people wanted to come spend their time with my daughter and give their love and creativity to her week after week and give their love and creativity to me. It was like, really? You really want to do this?
Yeah.
And yet they kept saying that it meant a lot to them too. So the end of my book is actually statements by the volunteers about how much it meant to them to participate, because I think a lot of times parents can feel like they can't ask for help, or sometimes they do when they get a no. And I cast a very wide net. I sent an email to tons of people that I knew saying, hey, this is what we're doing. And this is why we're doing it. And if you would like to be part of it, I'll train you to play with Sarah, or you can be with Amy, or you can fix me dinner. Anything will help. And I have heard from some of the people who were working with Sarah that it really gave them confidence and comfort to know that I was going to tell them exactly what I wanted them to do. Not that I was scripting their play, but I was like, okay, you're going to watch me play with Sarah, then you will play with Sarah and I'll observe remotely for 15 minutes, then we'll talk, then you'll do it again, then we'll talk. Every time you play with her, I'll observe for some of that time and we'll talk. And so they were never just at sea or on their own. And sometimes other people have said, oh gosh, that would have been so helpful. Sometimes I want to give support to someone, but I don't know how. And I don't feel like I'm going to do it right. And it would have been so helpful if someone was comfortable being so clear and direct about, this is what I want you to do.
But I think that, the fact that you cast your net out there, as you said, and you put it out there that this is what you were looking for and you were welcoming people in, that's not the easiest thing for some people to do, because obviously when you're asking for this help, there's also a part of you that some people may feel like it's a failing in them because I can't possibly ask for help, but you're asking for help. So for somebody who is feeling like they're somewhere in your shoes or where you were, but they're too afraid to ask for help, what would you say to that person?
That people like to help. That it really, I would say they should just skip to the end of my book, read the testaments from the volunteers, because it is something that has impacted their entire lives. Sometimes their career choices, definitely how they move through the world. And I don't know if I would have been able to ask for help if I thought it was for me, even though of course it was for me. But in my mind at the time, it was for Sarah. And so it was easy to ask for the help for her. Um, and so maybe if people are feeling like they can't ask for help for themselves, if they could switch it to, well, even if they're asking someone to cook them dinner, helping the parent is then going to help the child if the parent is a little less stressed.
Yeah, of course. And I do think that, that's a huge, like, sort of milestone for some people to, and a leap for some people to do, because some people are a little bit protective over their sort of independence and stuff, and they'd rather suffer in silence than just ask for help. It's such a big thing for some people to do. Yeah, advice to them: just do it, because surely, like, obviously when you saw other people loving Sarah so deeply, that must have had like such a really warming feeling for you, and been so lovely to watch and observe.
Yes. And honestly, even though it continues to sometimes be hard for me to take in the how much love comes to my family because of Sarah, it's that people are telling me, like, even still, her bus driver, whom Sarah loves, like, he is one of her most favorite people in the world. And when I thank him for being in our lives, or being patient about her being like needing a few more minutes in the morning, he said, "Oh, I'm the lucky one." It's like, really?
Oh,
Wow. And so maybe people, again, if they're having trouble asking for help, if they could just know that sharing their child with others is a gift to the others, um, maybe that would help too.
oh, bless. That really just touches me, that does, because it's one of those things that so many people just don't actually realize, like that, the effect that it would have, that real positive love and effect that it actually has and brings to so many other people. It's not about just what someone can do for you, it's about what you can do for them too. And yeah, that's really beautiful, really, really beautiful. When Sarah's language then began to expand and her eye contact intensified, those moments must have been huge, and we've touched upon them. Like you would really celebrate those moments with such joy. Was there a moment when you realized that you needed to stop measuring her against other children, and not because like she couldn't, but because that comparison was obviously hurting you as well, and detrimental to you?
Yeah, I think that's another one that's sort of ongoing. Um, and I really just feel it in my body as like a weight, a depressive pulling down and stress if I am in the mode of comparing and thinking, oh, well, other 19-year-olds, XYZ, or when she was younger and I did different things than the normal path for her schooling. So she was in she started preschool when she was 3 to keep getting the early intervention services. Then instead of going to kindergarten, that's when I pulled her home for full-time Sarah Rise. But then I had her going to a part-time preschool just a couple mornings a week after a little while with my sister-in-law, who was my full-time helper, or I would go with Sarah to be her support person. So Sarah was 9 when she started first grade. Um, and that was going to a full-time school, and when I sort of phased out the Sarah Rise program. And when I would see on Facebook, people posting their first day of whatever school for their 9-year-olds that Sarah had been a baby with, and their 9-year-olds were going off to third grade, and it was like, oh. And then I could feel like, oh, we're so far behind. Like the same thing of when she was a baby and these other kids were rolling and reaching for things and we weren't even reaching for things. um but when I could feel that in my body and have the contrast of when I would be in the Sarah Rise room with her and celebrating every tiny win and just focusing completely on her, that also feels different in my body. Like, oh, everything's light and coming up and possible. And so that becomes a really stark contrast just in my body. And so I can catch myself when I start comparing and be like, this is not how I want to live. And
Yeah.
maybe I need a good cry about it. That can be true. But I can also occasionally just be like, "Ooh, it's time to look on the other side of that curtain. It's time to like really just focus back on Sarah and how far she has come and delight in who she is."
Yeah, and that must be like a really hard thing to do because obviously, there's so many other children, around when they're in school. There's so many other children, and it's so easy to find yourself comparing, your own child against others. I mean, we do it. I've done it. We've all done it as parents. I mean, you do, but when that's having like such a real sort of detrimental effect on you because of your situation and just then making you kind of forget the milestones that your child has actually achieved. Surely that's like you have to draw a line and just say, as you were doing, and come back into your world and look at, no, this is my world. This is, what joy looks like to us, because this is what Sarah's achieving, and things like that, rather than comparing, because that's like just dragging all that positive from you, and it is just that's which is horrible. But we do it, don't we? And it's like, oh, why do we do it? Why? So but it's so easy to do. So what would you say to other women other parents, other mums who, will find themselves in the same situation? And you've said it doesn't go away. Sarah's 19 now, and you still find yourself, having moments where you compare against other 19, 20-year-olds, what they're doing and how their lives are. But when that's really taken a toll on your sort of mental, on your mental well-being, what would you say to other mothers in a similar situation?
I think finding your support team, I used to think of it as my Jenny Rise team, is really helpful. And that could be like your kitchen floor, to cry on your kitchen floor. It could be a journal. It could be someone to talk to. I've talked to different sort of therapist type people, or coaches from the Autism Treatment Center of America. Also talking to my mom, we realized like if we talked once a week or once a day, every weekday, that really helped me sort of just keep my head above water in general. And then I also found a really beautiful like parenting support group through Autism Optimism International. And to have a group where I can just share everything, like the high celebrations and the really low, like I'm feeling like a really crappy parent right now, and here's why, and here's the situation with Sarah. Does anyone have any ideas? I feel like I'm sort of held up by this net of love and support. I write every week and I started this when I started the Sarah Rise program and have just kept going. I write about how things are going and what's going on for Sarah, what's going on for me, what's going on for the whole family, and sharing. I'm pretty honest, as to maybe you could tell, about the experiences. And I find that once I share, then I am more free to move on and move into a different feeling. And I often get supportive responses, of people saying that they relate, or giving me ideas. But a lot of times people reach out and say, it was so helpful to read you sharing about your hard time because I could relate to that. And it was almost like I shared it and then can feel better moving on. So I feel really connected in that way. So I would say to anyone out there feeling struggling or alone, to find what connection and support you need. And people are all different. So maybe people need different things, but I think it can feel scary for people sometimes to do the jump of being really honest. And I've only ever had positive responses and support come back.
I think when you're honest as well about your feelings, and what it is that you actually go through, and someone else listens and hears the reality of what it's like, which sometimes might be exactly the same to what they're going through, but they have been too scared to show it or verbalize it. Do you think that that kind of gives those people permission when you're really honest with your situation and how you were finding things, and someone else is hearing it? Do you think that that gives other people permission then to, I guess, be honest about their, what their experience is and how their true emotions are?
I think so. Even if they aren't sharing it directly with me, maybe it gives them space to be honest with themselves and look at it and forgive themselves. I think this whole journey of parenting Sarah has been one of learning over and over how to forgive myself for the times when I'm not the parent that I, in my dream world, think that I somehow should be, of, never ever losing my temper and always having infinite patience. And well, that's just not the case. But the fact that Sarah and I can kind of keep having rough moments and keep coming back to loving each other and giving each other snuggles, and um, just I feel like we have a very strong connection. And that's not because of being perfect. It's because we basically keep screwing up, but being honest about it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's one of the things that I find quite fascinating is that obviously you began this journey to help your daughter rise, but I wonder too, like, did you rise too? Because surely there must have been parts of you that had to soften, parts of you that had to grow up, and parts of you, I guess, that you met for the very first time because of Sarah. Did
Yeah,
that happen?
definitely. Definitely. I feel like that is still also going on, where I'm still like, oh, maybe, and having new epiphanies. I definitely became a better cook and a more creative cook and baker than I ever was or thought I would be when we did the GAPS diet for Sarah, which is to heal a leaky gut. And so that means you make everything from scratch and you take it down to, like, there's no dairy, there's no processed sugar, there's no grain. And so I started grinding up dried peas, freeze dried peas, and making little crackers out of them, with mixing them with egg, or making a pizza crust out of them and putting shaved carrots on top to be Sarah's pretend cheese. And I love that I figured out to do those things. And she was so creative. Like, she can be simultaneously the most stubborn or inflexible and the most flexible person in the same moment. Like, she could be absolutely 100% determined that she wants, like, a certain shirt that we don't have. But if you give her some paper and she draws her approximation of that thing on the paper and we tape it to her shirt, then everything's fine. And most adults, I think, or many neurotypical kids would not be, they might not be so stubborn about, I have to have this shirt, but also they wouldn't be so accommodating of, like, oh, sure, this pretend drawn version that looks nothing like the real one is fine and satisfies my need. Um, anyway, so I think I'm a more creative person than I maybe thought that I was. I hope, I think that I have grown in love and patience, and yet it's also because I had to, and I'm still trying to become ever more patient and ever more loving and creative. And it's not like I've fully figured out how to best support her yet. I have the things we've done, and um, the things that I've learned work, and I'm still needing to figure out in every new situation how to support her the best way I can.
Do you think along the lines that you've learned to be kinder to yourself as well as you've been going along? Because were there times where you would be quite harsh on yourself, and then perhaps over a period of time you've learned to lighten up and love yourself and be kinder to yourself and realize, hey, I didn't, this wasn't something that a position that I thought, I'm just doing the best that I can. And, but it takes time, right?
Yes, I think I'm still working on that. I can still be quite hard on myself, but maybe I shorten the duration before I flip to realizing I need to be nicer. And my mom is very skilled at noticing when I'm getting extra critical of myself or putting the bar way too high, and she'll be like, what if you didn't need to be the most perfect mom? What if you could be a mediocre mom? Could you just go for that? And then that usually helps me relax and realize, right, I don't need to do all the things all the time.
Sure. It's easier said than done though, right? Because we all, we all try and be the best that we can do, and yeah, just need to be a bit kinder to ourselves. But if there was a parent who is listening right now who might feel overwhelmed, or behind, or just quietly exhausted, what do you think they are perhaps thinking but not admitting based on your experience?
I think usually those moments for me are when I am judging myself as being a bad parent, but not looking for the support to sort of counteract that vision and say, wait, maybe I'm not the worst pond scum, or that I'm trying to keep on going, like pulling up my bootstraps, when really I need to allow myself to melt into a puddle on the floor and be tired and be sad and allow my kids to see me being sad. Those moments actually prove to me more than maybe anything else that I've done a good job as a parent, because my kids come over and are sweet and are giving me tissues and wanting to just give me time and space to have my feelings. And they're not trying to get me to cheer up, which is my main goal with, if they're upset, is to try to meet them where they are and listen and give them space, trusting that once they get the emotions out, then they'll come back to their like happy selves, you know, without my needing to figure out how.
Yeah, sure. What do you think that you would say to that parent? And it's not from a place of inspiration, but just purely from a place of honesty.
I guess that they are not the pond scum that they think they are. That it's so easy to be so hard on ourselves, but especially if you have a child who needs extra support, and they could be an adult child by this point, that it's not easy, and it does push us to our absolute limits. But the fact that we're still in the ring, trying, getting up again, trying again, it's like you need someone in your corner, like, mopping your head and giving you a drink of water before they
Yeah,
send you back in there.
absolutely.
I think
Mhm.
I think parents can just be so hard on themselves and feel so alone, and that basically if you reach out, you're not alone. So if anyone's feeling really, really alone and crappy, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will assure you, you are not alone, and you're not.
So thank you. We will put, of course, details on how anybody can sort of reach out to you. We'll put them in the show notes, and we'll come to them in a little bit now, as well. But thank you for that. Jenny, just wanted to just touch back on the sunrise philosophy, which is about meeting the child exactly where they are. And that's quite radical in a world that's obsessed with improvement. Do you think that parenting in general would change if we focused more on connection rather than correction?
Yes. And maybe even beyond parenting. I guess to illustrate that, I would love to share that we've been having trouble with Sarah getting through a school day. And I think this is because of her grief that her grandfather died. And he was one of her most favorite people in the entire universe. And her teachers, none of us could figure out what was going on for her, because she can't explain about that. She'll say she was stressed, but she's not giving us the real details of like, oh, it was this moment and this is how I was feeling. And her teachers were trying different things that consulting with me and that I suggested, and nothing was helping until I decided last week to tell her that I would sit in the parking lot all day. And I did that for 4 days in a row. And I said, if at any time you need to go, I will be there in 5 minutes. Just tell your teachers and I'll be right there in 5 minutes or less. Um, and she started making it through her days. And I mean, this feels maybe a little early to say we're successful, but I think it was meeting her where she was with that connection, being like, we don't need to solve this situation. We just need to help your nervous system feel safe and supported, and that you're not trapped, and that you have agency and you have control over your situation and how long you're at school. And giving her that control then allowed her to actually make it through the day.
Sure. I think that's beautiful, and what an amazing thing that you were able to do, and a position that you were able to put yourself in, because a lot of people, they're busy, they're working full time or whatever. They have other commitments. They, don't that make it so that they're unable to do that for their child, unfortunately. But there's other things that you can do too, right? It's not just that, and it's just
That's
about.
right.
So if there's, what would you suggest then, that there would be other things that you could help for those who don't have the flexibility that you perhaps have?
Right. I have been very lucky to have had flexible jobs all my life, and a husband who is also allowing me to have my flexible jobs. But I think this comes back to the philosophy of Behind the Sunrise program, which you were mentioning. And one of the ideas is that if your child is being very controlling and not being flexible, to give them more control so that they feel safe to then be more flexible. So clearly there are going to be situations where parents still need to have control, and you can't just completely give it over. But as much as you can, look for places to help your child feel empowered and feel that they have agency, then they will feel safer to relax and be more flexible to go with the requests that the parent or teacher is making.
Yeah, great bit of advice there. I think that's great for just general parenting anyway. I think the more that we can try and help our child to have a little bit of independence and choice and decision, themselves, is really, really helpful for them. Just when you hear the word autism, and when people hear the word autism, they often think limitation. When you actually hear it now, what do you feel?
I think that it has such a broad range that I wish that there was an easier way to talk about it. That a lot of times I think people think, oh, autism, Rain Man, oh, super duper crazy smart, you're going to have a PhD, but maybe not socially connect. And I want to be like, I have a sweetheart of an individual who can read my emotions like anything. And we're still working to have her cross the street safely, and she can't do math of a kindergartner. So these are two very different ends of a spectrum. And so I just feel like it's kind of an inadequate word, or it means that people need support in some way, but the kind of support they might need is so vastly varying. Occasionally I've had people come to me saying, oh, you know about autism, maybe you could help this person over here. And I'm like, I know about Sarah, and I'm still trying to figure out how to help her the best. I can give you some basic ideas of if there's someone who does repetitive things, and including now, the things that Sarah will do repetitively are verbal, and she wants me to participate and she wants me to say certain things. And so the way to join her, and this could be perhaps helpful out in the broader world, if you have someone who really always wants to talk about a certain thing, the way to join them is to join them and talk about that thing, and figure out a way to be excited to talk about windshield wipers a lot. Or Sarah loves to talk about her granddad who just died, and I do too. But she loves to talk about him in all different ways, and how he's wearing certain socks in spirit. And so the way to meet her is to be delighted, which in that way, that's easy.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Do you think it's changed how you see difference in general?
Yes, well, I still always want to do the best and be the best that I absolutely can and get that A plus and get the teachers, liking me even if I'm not in school anymore. Um, but I think having Sarah continues to be a really good reminder that it's not all about getting the good grades, and that actually, if the main goal of one's life is to just bring joy and have connection with others, well, lots of people can do that. Everyone can do that, regardless of whether they have a disability or need extra support in some way. And I have to remind myself, oh, well, Sarah's already bringing joy to the world and making a difference. So, like, why am I worried about whatever I thought a person needed to fulfill to sort of be worthy of living? And could I extend that same grace to myself and say, oh, maybe I've already done it?
Hmm. Do you think that you are a different person now? And if so, who are you now that you weren't before Sarah?
I think it's that I am now able to see some wiggle room or some chinks in my own armor of there is room for all of us, and that it's not all about getting the straight A's, and it's about figuring out how to move through our life with making space for all of the feelings, and that going towards those feelings is the quickest way to move through them, which is how I was raised. My own parents did have that understanding that if I was having a hard time, if they just let me have a good cry, then they wouldn't have to like punish me or force me to do my homework. I could just, after I had my good cry, I could think easily about my homework and do it. um, I think I've moved even more into that with parenting.
Amazing. Amazing. Jenny, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all that you have, and being so honest about your experience with your beautiful daughter, Sarah. You've written a book, you're an author, and it's called Watching Sarah Rise. Tell us about that.
It is my journey with her from the early days of, oh no, this is really hard. My child is not meeting the milestones. She's having trouble eating. Like, what are we doing? Through the decision to run the Sarah Rise program, and how I made that happen, how I found volunteers, how I trained them, and then following her and me through those years of, she's learning, she's growing. Oh, here's this challenge. Oh, potty training. Oh, how's that working? Oh, she doesn't like having her hair washed. How do we help her with this? Um, and a lot of sharing about my hard times and my really beating up on myself and how I moved through those hard times. Um, and then with her being ready to go off to school, and what that was like, and then the statements from the volunteers.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you. Obviously we'll put a link to the book. Is it on Amazon? How can people buy it? Is it on Amazon?
Amazon, mm-hmm. Barnes and Noble, anywhere people want to buy their books. You can go to Bookshop or go to any local bookstore and ask them to order it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jenny. And if people obviously want to reach out to you on social media, I know we touched upon it earlier, but how can they find you?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Jennifer Celeste Briggs Author. And my website is watchingsarahrise.com. That has links to both Facebook and Instagram, and a form for people to email me if they want. And I also want to share that if people prefer an audiobook, I did do the audiobook recording myself.
Amazing. I think that makes such a big difference, because it's hearing your own voice, as opposed to, someone else, an actor, actress, reading it for you. So brilliant. Thank you, Jenny. Jenny, honestly, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. What I love about your story is just that you don't pretend that it was easy. There was doubt, there was comparison, there was criticism, determination, creativity, surrender as well. And somewhere along the way, motherhood didn't just shape Sarah, it reshaped you. So Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We will put all the links to your, how people can, well, obviously to your book and also to your social media in the show notes. To any parent listening, please remember that there is no one way to do this. There is no universal timeline and there is no perfect temperament, but there is presence. So, Jenny, just before we go, if the version of you holding newborn Sarah could see who you are now, what do you think she'd feel?
I think she'd feel proud and relieved.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. Thank you so much for your honesty. I really, really, really appreciate you. And to everyone listening, if this conversation resonated, please share it with someone who might need to feel just a little bit less alone. Follow Unspoken Emotions for conversations that don't just skim the surface. Remember, as always, there is strength in every step and courage in every story. Until next time, big love.